Hello, everybody. Okay, so this is going to be a quick, hopefully quick, week one review. I'm going to make these reviews as I do them to be actually required homework assignments to make sure you are learning the material in class. It gives me a chance to fill in any blanks or to give some additional elaboration as I believe it's needed. You'll get an email soon, or maybe you saw this after you got the email. Anyway, couple of things real quick to talk about. First, you can talk to me about anything. I'm here to help you through the class. I am willing to help you on anything that you need help with, any extra time you may need for me to try and explain things to you or to help you make sense of stuff. I'm here. I do believe in hand holding if that is what is needed, as long as you're the hand that's reaching out to me, asking me to help you. My job is to make sure you learn stuff, and I can't do my job unless I'm available. So understand that I'm available. A couple of things that I want to have done over the next couple days, hopefully by Monday, but by Wednesday at the latest. One, I've created a SurveyMonkey. Last semester I did this in class and it was helpful, but I'm going to do it online. Basically, so the SurveyMonkey, it's 8 questions. It asks you some personal life questions and some pre-existing American government knowledge questions. I'll flip the camera around as I do. When you click on the link, it'll be in an email and on Moodle. This is what you'll see. It'll ask questions about your current sort of status. If you're employed, do you have a job? Same thing. How many hours of work you week? When you work? Do you have kids? When was the last time you took a college class? Do you have a computer or internet connection at home? If not, where do you access the internet? Those are the first 4 questions. Next. Click next after you answer those. It comes up. This is pre-existing American government knowledge, political knowledge, history knowledge, things like that. Who are the first, 3rd, 16th, the last president, and who is the current president? If you don't know the answer, that's okay. If you don't know the answer to any of these, that's okay. Just please indicate that you don't know. So let's say you don't know who the 16th president is. Say 16th dash I don't know, or something to that effect. I'm going to ask you how many members are in the U.S. House of Representatives, how many senators are there, how many of each, or how many does each state get, who's the governor of North Carolina, how many states are there, what are the 3 branches of government. If you notice, this last one has a lot of mini questions in it. Also, name as many of the following as you can. Who is? These are all people. Who is the Speaker of the House, the Majority Leader of the House, the Minority Leader of the House, the Majority Leader of the Senate, etc., etc. Name as many Supreme Court justices as you can. And indicate which one you are answering. Don't just put the names down, but say, Speaker of the House, dash, this is who it is, etc. If you don't know, like any of the Supreme Court justices, for example, just say Supreme Court justices dash I don't know any. Totally fine. If you don't know any, I don't care. That doesn't. None of this is being held against you. You're not being graded on any of this. All this does is it helps me make sure that I am teaching the class at an appropriate level, that I am making sure I don't assume things that y'all know that I shouldn't assume. Sometimes it's difficult when you're very involved in politics and are surrounding yourselves with people that know a lot about this stuff to fully recognize that there are some that don't know as much as you do. So I just want to make sure that I offer the best opportunity to everybody, and this is one way for me to do that. The one other thing that I'm going to send you a link to is something called the Political Compass. It's a test, quote unquote, that I want you to take. It is something that'll help. It's going to be part of your political ideology paper. It'll help you sort of think about your political ideology by asking you some questions. I'll have a link to it. It's politicalcompass.org. If you look at the PowerPoint, the week one PowerPoint, the parts we haven't got to yet, the Political Compass is towards the end of that. Let me show you that here. When you go to politicalcompass.org, you'll see this page. You can read a little bit about what their ideas are and their theory are. Then at the bottom, if that focuses, you'll see it says here, take the test, or click here to start. Or at the top of the screen here, it says take the test. Click on any of those, and it takes you to the test. Gives you a question or a statement, and you just put if you strongly disagree, agree, or strongly agree. There, questions on different areas. When you get to the end, it'll give you a score similar to this. It'll look something like this. Your economic right/left score, and it'll give you a negative or a positive number, and then social, libertarian, authoritarian score, it'll give you a negative or a positive number. This, just FYI, is not my score. It's something somebody posted on the internet, and I just wanted a blank photo of this for the PowerPoint. Email me what you got on these scores. Email me those, and what I want to do is put them all on a chart, and so people can get an idea of where everybody in the class sort of ended up. I won't put people's names attached to where they ended up, but you'll be able to see the distribution on here, and we'll talk a little bit about what this means about your political ideology and different ways to think about political issues today. Okay? So there's that. Next week, remember Chapter 2 and the Constitution. Those are on Moodle, and we'll talk about those. One or two things I just wanted to review real quick about what we went over this week. So remember who Thomas Hobbes is and who John Locke are. Thomas Hobbes, founder of the social contract. One of the big things the social contract does is it creates a secular justification for who's in charge, for why societies exist, for the rules that we operate under. And that was really, really important in Western political thought and in our American government founding. Thomas Hobbes was the state of nature is a literal place, and he believed in an absolute ruler. John Locke was the one that says in social contract you do not give up some rights, that there's some rights that are inalienable. And you have the right to overthrow the sovereign, and John Locke was influential in the American founders' ideas as they did overthrow their sovereign, the British Crown. Remember, when thinking about your personal ideology, to define the words that you associate with them. If you say, I believe in freedom and personal responsibility, what does that mean? I will say, for example, I believe in personal responsibility. Personal responsibility to me is a very important part of my political ideology personally. But I bet you my definition of personal responsibility is going to be different than what a lot of people traditionally think of when they think of personal responsibility. Let me talk about that a little bit. And then just finally, bias and partisanship, and theory. So bias is sort of the way you look at the world, the lens through which you look at the world. Other things we may call this, though they're not all exactly the same. Call it the theory that you have, or the model of the world that you work with, the assumptions you make about the world, the paradigm you work with. All of these are sort of like not all describing the exact same thing, but all part of each other. The assumptions that you make when looking at facts in the world are part of your model of the world, which are part of your theory and part of your biases. So here's a little example of what we're trying to get at here. A theory, for example, in a scientific sense, has a lot of lines of evidence pointing towards it, at least a good theory. Multiple lines of evidence pointing towards the theory being true, and in general, the theory has some sort of predictive power. Your bias, your theory about the world, is going to have, not only is it a lens through which you see the world, but as such, it's going to have lines of evidence that you're using to justify your bias and your assumptions, and it also will have some sort of predictive power about the world. And that's why if you look at the slide, one of the things I didn't go over, it says theory is a model of the world, has predictive power. Theory includes economic, social theory, theory of human behavior. All this is at the heart of the social contract. And a theory is not a guess, but there are better and worse supported theories. So what this means in some ways is that there isn't necessarily a quote-unquote wrong theory, but there are theories that don't have any evidence to support them. There aren't necessarily wrong biases. There are perhaps some biases that don't have as much evidence to support them at this present moment in time. So part of, real quick, one of those predictive power type ideas, biases, assumptions about the world is tax policy. Republicans generally operate under the assumption, think very open. If you follow politics, you know that this is a general thing they'll say. If you lower taxes, people will invest more of their money because they'll have more incentive to invest, and that'll create jobs. And actually what they may say even is that'll increase government revenue. That's what currently in North Carolina, we just recently passed a big tax overhaul, which included a really big tax cut. And part of the idea was that this tax cut would actually raise revenue because it would encourage more people to invest, to spend their money, because they would have more and they would have to pay less in taxes for the money they made. This was also something that Reagan and his office used to justify the tax cuts, or some of the tax cuts that he implemented in the 80s. So the idea is, or their policy position is, we want to cut taxes. Their theory of the way the world works, their assumptions, their model of the world about the way people behave, about economics, is that if we cut taxes, that will mean that when people realize they have more money coming into their paycheck, they will go out and spend more. And those people that have businesses, if they have more money coming in, they will invest in those businesses, hire new workers. Those new workers, will then have jobs. There'll be more jobs. Those new workers who are also bringing home more money because their taxes are lower will be spending more money. Wealth overall across the entire country, for everybody, will grow as this economic stimulus is happening by lowering taxes. And thus, actually lowering taxes, because it creates more wealth, will increase the actual amount of money the government will take in taxes, because more wealth is being created. For example, 10% of a 10% tax on $1 million is more money, real money, than a 30% tax on like $50,000. If you have a 30% tax on 50,000, if you have a 30% tax, and people have in the country $50,000, if you lower the tax to 10%, and that extra money they're bringing home and investing in such causes everybody's wealth to increase to $1 million, then you can see how that would cause there to be greater government revenue, even though taxes are lower. Whether or not that theory is actually true or not relies upon some certain, different lines of evidence. We can look at things that have happened in the past, if it's worked or not worked, but that's one of the biases, one of the theories that some people work with in justifying their policies. And like I said, it has predictive power about how people will act. And that's that. I guess partisanship, like I said, it's just rooting for a team. It's ignoring your bias. Let's go with the Republicans. Republicans generally in favor of tax cuts. If a Democrat comes up and offers the exact same tax cut that a Republican is offering, and then the Republican all of a sudden says, that's a really bad idea, it's probably because of partisanship. They're rooting for their team, and they don't want to make it seem as if the other side has good ideas. That's true of all sides, to some degree. And I think it's a lot of the reason why everybody, or a lot of people in America, have such a negative view of government and such right now, is because there's a lot of partisanship. And as we'll get into a little bit next week when we look at the current landscape, at least my opinion is there isn't really that much policy-wise that separates the parties from each other. We'll look at a couple examples of how that's true, or how my interpretation of it is true. Certainly everybody else is free to look at the facts that I also see and come to different interpretations and say, well, this is actually a large gap instead of a smaller gap. That's just part of how bias and that stuff works. But that'll be elaborated more on next week, and I hope this was informative and not a waste of your time. Have a great weekend.